Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our October 21st council meeting. It is 6 o'clock. Welcome, everyone. Call to order. I see that everyone is here. Disclose your pecuniary interest. If you have any, please send them to Jackie, email them to Jackie. Minutes from the previous meeting, October 7th. Any questions, errors, or omissions on that? Hearing none, we need a motion to approve the minutes. Councillor Moyer, Councillor Nickel, all in favor? All in favor? Carried? Carried. All right. First item of business is a delegation, and it is Aqua is doing their quarterly report, and it's Jackie Muller and Rod Twee who is doing it. So who's going to start?
I'll start, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council and municipal staff for the opportunity to present to you second quarter operational reports and our second quarter financial reports. I'd like to start off with the North Middlesex distribution system first, and I'll quickly go over the report, talk about some highlights, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask away, and I'll do my best to answer those as best as I can. So on page 2, I'll start off with compliance and exceedances summary. There's nothing to report for the second quarter. You'll see third-party inspections and our occupational health and safety. When it pertains to occupational health and safety, as our COVID staff continue vigilance and additional precautions as required as per COVID-19 pandemic issue, there were no additional health and safety issues identified to date. On page number 3, you'll see general maintenance and plant activities, and down at the bottom, that's where we start our second quarter. We can flip through to not just page 4, but on page 5, I've highlighted the municipal work orders, locates, water turn-ons, turn-offs, and our water main and water service repairs and installations. Under alarm and call-ins, we'll have to flip to page number 6. And you'll see that I've highlighted for our second quarter, which is predominantly emergency locates, low discharge pressure, and our hydro outages. Under complaints and concerns, second quarter, we have a low pressure complaint on 11215 Petty Street. And on page number 7, you'll see another one on 3148 Bornish, but we were able to investigate and determine that was on the private side. And under operational highlights for second quarter, I'm going to touch base with on April, Aqua researched archives on all existing operation manuals and found a process control narrative for the existing Park Hill Reservoir. Aqua operators, Aramosa Engineering and Pure Services Solutions were on site to determine the Park Hill Reservoir, the issues with running both duty pumps at the same time. It was found that the outlet control pressure was set improperly on the HMI screen, which is human machine interface. These change set points from 61 to 69 PSI is believed to be caused by a short period hydro outage. These set points were set back to its normal operating range and all worked properly after that. So that means the second pump did not continue to run. We went with one pump as originally designed. But back on the first quarter, under January, you'll see that Pure Solutions was on site. So under January 07, Pure Solutions was on site at the Park Hill Reservoir to investigate replacing the outgoing pressure switch due to last month's issues with both duty pumps running at the same time. So at the Park Hill Reservoir, we had 2 pumps running, and we basically couldn't figure out why. We were trying to figure, we suspected it was a pressure switch, and then from that point, it migrated into looking into our PLC, which is Program Logic Controller, which essentially is the brain of that facility. So if your reservoir level is low, it sends a signal, say, hey, turn a valve open, let me fill up. If the pressure is too low, it'll send a signal, say, turn on a second pump, I need more pressure. Essentially, it's the brains of that facility. When we looked into that, we found that it's outdated. there's no roadmap. It doesn't tell us anything. So we couldn't figure out where to go. We couldn't troubleshoot properly, which means it was reverse engineering, which that means bigger dollars. So we were working both with our service provider for our instrumentation in Aramosa, which is a SCADA specialist, and it came down to that fact. One quote I had was $90,000. To reverse engineer was even more money than that. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I started full-time, if you remember, in March. And March was basically all COVID for me. And then April, I started to research these manuals that I had, you know, in the archives. And I found a roadmap for the PLC. And what this means is that it buys us time, so that if I had something that failed at the Park Hill Reservoir, we could at least try to troubleshoot with the information that we have. Working with Mr. Lampman, we're going to come up with a recommendation that we need to invest some dollars, capital dollars, in updating our Park Hill Reservoir SCADA system. And if you haven't seen it already, you will. You'll see that we're doing an assessment at all our facilities pertaining to SCADA, which is supervisory control and data acquisition. So this is trending the brains of these facilities and how it works. That was a big win for us. Back in June, you'll see us come back again just to confirm what we have found, which is to be true. I always like to put our regional water supply shutdowns because our staff is becoming very proficient on that. And it is a lot of work to go into that and scheduling that and making sure that these water tankers are providing safe, potable drinking water for our residents. And lastly, on June 19th, we installed some of our new water sampling pressure monitoring stations. I've bought 5, so we just installed the last 3. And you'll see out throughout the course of this year that these pressure monitoring units have paid dividends for us in trying to investigate our pressure complaints that we have for some of our residents, our leak detection loss, and it gives us a lot of eyes in our systems that we don't normally have or had before. On page 8, DWQMS update. There's nothing new there to update you on, but those are the dates that that we're working with. And of course, I've listed our regulatory inspections. Nothing new for the second quarter. Any questions on the North Middlesex distribution system?
All right, questions from council. Councillor Moyer, and then the deputy mayor.
Just wondering with the direction that we're going with that Park Hill plant now, with the sewage treatment, and you're talking spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, it sounds like, on new management systems. Is that something that's really feasible at this time?
It's going to be feasible because it's going to be a planned approach. I'm not saying that we have to dump everything right this second, but we have to start with a plan. And the plan is that we have to identify and then schedule and budget accordingly when we're looking at that facility, because we're going to keep this facility. It's just that PLC, for an example, it doesn't exist anymore. So if it crashes, where am I going to get parts to get that? Doesn't mean I have to do it right today, but I do have to look at that in the future, because when it does crash or fail, what's my next step? So it starts off with a plan, starts off with a budget, and then we work systematically with it, tying in with the Park Hill wastewater treatment plant, because whatever we're going to put in there new has to be compatible for what we're going to be looking at updating. Okay,
so this will be interchangeable with the new system then that we'll be looking at.
That's right. Everybody's going to be talking to one another.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the goal, Councillor Moore, and we will obtain it. In the budget, the 10-year capital plan, there is money allocated to do this, already built into that 10-year capital plan. But yeah, with larger projects going on that take precedent, things like this can fall back in the schedule, obviously.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Cornelison.
Thank you, Mayor Roth. Regarding the water loss detection system, how is that progressing? Are we making any headway? Are we noticing any savings in terms of detecting these water losses and repairing them?
Well, when it comes to this, I can't speak to the dollar figure. I'll leave that to Mr. Lambman because he's the one who's paying for or buying the water. Again, we continue to make great strides in the community of Elsi Craig. McGillivray East system. I was just actually at the flow meter today in that large zone. That ward is using a 5 liters per second per day, which is a pretty good flow rate for that system. And you'll see that we're still doing 40 to 50 repairs a year. So I can't see that slowing down. But we need to, it's tough for me to say that, what that looks like, because we're just still scratching the surface of that leak detection program. And we still need to continue with pressure monitoring. We still need to do district metering areas. We probably need to look at more district meters to really fine tune this whole system that we have in front of us.
So if I understood your response, then it sounds to me like the majority of the work has been done in Elsi Craig. Has there been anything in McGillivray, anything done in the rest of rural North Middlesex?
No. So to Elsi Craig, Deputy Mayor, Elsi Craig, we saved about 80,000 cubic meters in the 2019 calendar year, which equates to give or take $40,000. The entire investment of the program to get it to that point was about $40,000. So it's paid for itself in Elsi Craig. What we did find at the end of the year, though, was that the water loss across the municipality, factoring in that 80,000 cubes that we caught, was still higher. Now, that's not necessarily all loss. It's part non-revenue, meters not working, so on and so forth. There's a few things to it, mainly loss. As part of the budget that's presented for the water and wastewater rates, our first major step in the rural area is to go after meter pits, to go after the long services. So the infrastructure that we have in the towns like Elsi Craig and Park Hill, we don't have in the country. So for us to valve off a section of water line that has a suspected loss on it could be 2, 3, 4 kilometers long. After we figure out where that section is, then we have to physically put boots on the ground and go walk it. We would literally be walking ditches where we don't have tracer wire on water main, so we don't even know exactly where the water main is, looking for areas where waters come up. It's extremely difficult in the rural. We have not approached the rural. Our first step is taking off the long services and then go from there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions at that time? Rod, I have one for you. If this system in Park Hill lets us down, before we're prepared for it, how bad does that cripple that reservoir up? Like, I mean, does the water keep flowing, or we just can't control it, or what is actually the result?
Yeah, through your worship, great question. We have the ability to actually turn the reservoir off, turn the pumps off, and just put it in bypass mode. Make a call to our sister company, Lake Huron Water Treatment System, and say, listen, please do not schedule any shutdowns until we get this fixed. So we can operate in bypass mode temporarily to resolve the issues that we have.
Caveat to that,
as long
though,
as they don't shut it down. Sorry?
but a caveat to that, though, is we lose 1,100 cubic meters of storage. Because without that reservoir online, we don't have the storage and we won't have the pressure to get to the system or the flow for that matter.
So I get that, but at least I was just wondering, what happens if that goes down? What's the immediate impact? And so we can bypass if we had to on a short term. Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions? So carry on, Rod.
So the next one I'll start with is the Elsi Craig Water Pollution Control Plant. I'll start off on page number 2, where we have the capacity information. And then our chart below that is our design flow, average daily flow for your review for the second quarter. I'll go to page number 3, and under compliance summary, second quarter, there was no compliance issues were identified for the second quarter. Flip to page number 4. Occupational health and safety, nothing has changed there. Inspections, second quarter, we have those listed for your review. General maintenance and plant activities. If I can flip to page number 5, we'll start there. Alarms and call-ins, I have to flip to page number 6. Again, our alarms and call-ins are going to be basically due to our power outages that we get quite a few of in our system. Complaints and concerns, nothing to report for the second quarter. And our performance assessment report. Chart 1 is the raw sewage monthly average daily flows. And I put 2019 and 2020 as a comparison. Page number, where am I here now? Page number 7, we'll start off raw sewage sample results, second quarter. Table 2, we have the effluent sample results. So that's our final effluent that we discharge into the stream. Down at the bottom, we have ECA, so environmental certificate approval. That's our objective and our limits. When we exceed the limits, that's a non-compliance. And that is something that the Ministry of Environment and Conservation of Parks are very interested in. So we have those listed for CBOD, TSS, TP, TAN, and E. coli, and pH. I'll flip over to page number 8. Average monthly effluent CBOD, so that's carbonaceous biochemical oxygen demand. I have set the objective in the limits, and we're well below our objective. The next one is total suspended solids. We're well below our objective there. Page number 9, our average monthly effluent total phosphorus. You'll see our objective and our limit, and so far this year, we are below our objective. Chart number 5, average monthly effluent total ammonia nitrogen. Objectives and limits for your review, so we're doing very well there as well. And our page 10, we have E. coli geometric mean density. And at the bottom, our effluent pH results. Our minimum objective and our maximum objective are the same, so they're both 6.5 to 8.5. And the performance assessment report is basically an indicator of how well the facility is operating under current flows. Is there any questions when it comes to the Elsi Craig wastewater pollution control plant?
Questions? Deputy Mayor Cornelison.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Yeah, Rod, on page 6 for the daily flow, I noticed it's significantly lower this year than last year. Is that because it's been a drier year, less rain?
Yeah, we've seen fluctuating flows. I know this winter was a wet winter, and it seemed to be a very dry summer. So, yes, that is exactly where our flows are indicating.
So is that an indication then that storm water is going into the sewer system?
No, I don't.
Infiltration, right? Yeah,
It's-
there's a definite indication of infiltration with numbers like that.
When you say infiltration, does that mean natural drainage or hooked into it?
Either or.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No other questions? Go ahead, Ron.
Okay, Park Hill wastewater. I'll start off on page number 2. We have our capacity information and our operational description for review. Page number 3, compliance summary, nothing to report. Occupational health and safety, same as before when it pertains to COVID, and no other health and safety issues identified. Page number 4, inspections, general maintenance plant activities, all listed for the second quarter. On page number 5, alarms and call-ins, nothing to report for the second quarter. Nothing to report for complaints and concerns. And our next will be our performance assessment report. Raw sewage monthly average daily flows. We have those listed. Page number 6, raw sewage sample results, effluent sample results. And this one's a little bit different because it's an F5-1 objective and guideline, and they're a little bit less or more lenient than when it comes to our ECA for the Elsi Craig. And that's listed right at the bottom of that chart. Page number 7, average monthly effluent biochemical oxygen demand. You'll see that we're well below our objectives. Average monthly effluent total suspended solids. You'll see that in May, our objective was exceeded. Chart number 4, average monthly effluent total phosphorus. Again, we're well below our objective for there as well. Any questions on the Park Hill wastewater report?
Questions on Park Hill? Do you have a question, Councillor McClinchy? No? Okay, no questions? Okay. I think that's it for you, isn't it, Rod? And I think it's Jackie's turn, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Go ahead, Jackie.
Good evening, Your Worship, Council and Municipal Staff. Following Rod's documents are, there's the attachment for the financial report for the second quarter. For Elsi Craig Wastewater Treatment Plant, we are under budget by $10,684. For the Park Hill Lagoons, we are over budget by $2,512. And for the North Middlesex water system, we are under budget by $4,514. So for the 3 systems in North Middlesex, we are under budget by $12,686. I'm not sure if you want me to go into the breakdown of the reports, or if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, questions from council? No questions from council? Jackie, I would have is it's the Park Hill wastewater that's just a little bit over budget right now.
Yes, that's correct. And Rod, do you want to talk about with that, or do you want me to?
No, yeah. So when it comes to our second quarter financials, when it comes to Park Hill wastewater system, we had a very wet winter. So it was a combination of both of having to pull some pumps due to these wet weather flows that were plugging up our pumps. So that cost us a little bit more time being spent there. And then we've also increased the discharge time, if you will, of the Park Hill Lagoon as well. So historically, it was always been a 2-week period to discharge. This time around, I was probably closer to 5 weeks discharging that lagoon. And again, that's just to maximize its efficiency, because I knew that we were having some new subdivisions come on board here. So I really wanted to maximize that. So we spent some more time, and then also with the extra costs of the wet weather, plugging our pumps at our pump station.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Any other questions on the budget? No other questions? I guess that's it. Thank you very much, as always. Do a great job and keep going.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, John Mike, is SEMA ready or not quite ready yet?
Through your worship, they are ready. I'm just adding them in now.
Okay, thank you. So next we do have another delegation. It is SEMA and Engineering, and it's Tom Montgomery and Martin Lewichik. I'm not sure. Martin's going to have to tell us how you pronounce that properly. And it's the update on the progress of the Elsi Craig water tower project. So who's going to start?
Mr. Mayor, Tom Montgomery here. Can you hear me all right?
Okay. Yes, I can.
I'm not as used to Zoom as I am for Teams, but I'll try my best. I'll be making the presentation today. It's my pleasure to update council on the progress that we've made to date and an update on the status of the project itself. I will share my screen and hopefully, oh, I'm not able to yet. The host is disabled, so we just have to make sure I can do that. I'll try again. There, is that my screen? I think so. Share screen. Okay. And let me just try my presentation here. It's right up here. Can you see that already?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, and I will just see if I can start from the beginning here. Sorry, slideshow. From the beginning. Okay. 1 second, bear with me. Okay, is my screen clean? Okay, clear enough for everyone?
Yeah, we're good to go, Tom.
Okay, great. So again, this is the project update for the Elsi Craig elevated water tank. Just for the agenda for the presentation today, I wanted to just do a quick overview with the North Middlesex water system, and then provide the update for the Elsi Craig elevated water project. And there's a bunch of topics that I will cover today, and then hopefully I'll have a few minutes to answer any questions you may have at the end. So just a quick overview of the North Middlesex water system. Again, the municipality of North Middlesex is supplied water from the Lake Huron primary water supply system, and also the municipality of Lucan-Biddulph. There's no additional treatment or disinfection provided by North Middlesex, and your water service area is divided into 5 service wards: Park Hill, Elsi Craig, McGilvery, East Williams, and West Williams. So the North Middlesex serves about 6,700 residents throughout. So you can see over here, I'm just going to try and hide this. There we go. With the map, it just shows some of the service boundaries with Elsi Craig just up in at the north end of East Williams. And one of the reasons to show you this today is just to look at some of the options and potential that this location for the water storage could have in terms of emergency supply beyond Elsi Craig within the service area itself. So the overall distribution system for the North Middlesex water service areas is shown here on the map. There's 5 secondary connections to the Lake Huron primary water supply system. There's 3 intermunicipal connections for emergency. There is an emergency connection to the Thetford water system, the Lucan water system, as well as South Huron water system. And just a summary in terms of the total flow that's been coming into North Middlesex 2019 for the full year. There was 1.35 million meters cubed, roughly 300 million imperial gallons. With the existing storage facilities, just a recap of what's available today, there are 2 existing water reservoirs that provide storage capacity for Park Hill and West Williams water service areas. The Mount Caramel Reservoir at 750 meters cubed, fairly small, and then the Park Hill Reservoir at about 1,100 meter cube capacity. There are no water storage facilities for Elsi Craig and the surrounding areas, which leaves these areas vulnerable to water shortages, pressure fluctuations, and service interruptions during shutdowns of the Lake Huron primary system. The Park Hill Reservoir on its own has about 12 hours of average day demand storage, and that's during an emergency or scheduled shutdown of the Lake Huron primary water supply system. And that's on the assumption that the reservoir is filled at the beginning of that emergency event. Within the Lake Huron primary system, there's 3 existing reservoirs that provide water storage capacity throughout its primary area. McGilvery Reservoir is about 18,000 meters cube capacity, one of the larger ones outside of Arva. The Exeter Hensel Reservoir is about 8,000 meters cube capacity. So the McGilvery Reservoir and pumping station is primarily used for boosting water from the Lake Huron water treatment plant to the Arva Terminal Reservoir during high demand periods. And the McGilvery Reservoir currently has up to about 12 hours of average day demand storage available during an emergency or scheduled shutdown of the primary transmission main. So that's good news. There is a storage down available when and if the main pipeline goes down, but it's a matter of how that water storage gets distributed to the customers. Oops, excuse me here. And overall, just some information with regards to how many shutdowns the municipality's been encountered over the last few years. We put together a list here just from 2017 to 2019, showing that over the last 3 years, there's been 39 emergencies requiring some level of shutdown in the supply system to Elsi Craig. The supply disruptions over this period have had major impacts on Elsi Craig and the surrounding area because there is no storage available. And I think you're aware of that at this point. But the additional cost over the past 5 years for providing emergency supply to Elsi Craig and also the surrounding areas during those shutdowns is estimated about $400,000, which is not sustainable in the years ahead. So there's just a breakdown of the annual costs that have been recorded with regards to some of the larger shutdowns within the system. Some of these costs include the time for the operator, as well as the cost for hauling in water on some of the larger shutdowns. Oh, sorry. So the water storage needs, the supply for Elsi Craig is currently serviced by an 8-inch water main connection to the Lake Huron primary transmission main, and that's downstream of the McGilvery Reservoir and booster pumping station. And as I mentioned earlier, there's no water storage facility in Elsi Craig for fire protection or emergency supply. And in 2019, the Class A study was completed for North Middlesex, and that identified a storage deficit in the Elsi Craig water service area and recommended construction of a new elevated water storage tank to meet current and projected water storage requirements. And based on the 2019 average day consumption record for Elsi Craig, the minimum storage capacity required to meet ministry guidelines, it's Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, is about 1,600 meters cubed. And there's a breakdown of the components of that storage. Equalization, that's the working volume within your water storage facility to maintain circulation in the tank and between high and low water under normal operating conditions. You'll have fire storage of 724 meters cubed. And that's based on a level of fire protection by ministry guidelines of about 100 liters per second fire flow for 2 hours. And then there's some emergency storage as well for 312 meters cubed. Within the Lake Huron system, they recently completed a master water plan, and that was done in 2020. And that identified a storage deficit of about 700 meters cubed in the McGilvery Reservoir under normal operating conditions by the year 2038. So it's within the design period we're looking at as well. It was just brought up to our attention, and then the reason why we're just mentioning it today is because there is an opportunity, and it was identified in their master plan, that 700 meters cubed of storage could be provided as part of the regional system or within the local or the secondary system storage. And they've identified some other options in terms of operational changes that may help to mitigate that storage deficit. But we did have some discussions with Lake Huron just to see if there was any interest in providing some additional storage in the Elsi Craig water storage facility to cover that 700 meters cubes of storage. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So here's the project itself, the elevated water storage tank project. So with regards to what was recommended in the EA, it was construction of a new elevated water tank located northwest of the intersection of West Corner Drive and Queen Street, shown on the drawing here by the red hatched area. It's about 0.4 hectares. The Class A also recommended replacement of the 50-year-old 8-inch diameter cast iron water main on Queen Street with a new 300 millimeter PVC water main right from the tank down into Elginfield Road, Old Highway 7 in Elsi Craig. So the municipality of North Middlesex awarded the engineering services contract for the project to SEMA in 2020. These are just excerpts taken from the EA that was completed. So the status of where we are with the project since it's been awarded in June. We completed the survey work in June, also prepared all the base plans at that time. Phase 1 ESA was provided October 7th, 2020, and it was completed by Englobe. There were no potential issues of significant concerns that were identified. We completed the Phase 1 and 2 Archaeological Assessment. It's a heritage assessment as well. Archaeological Research Associates were engaged to do that study, and they prepared a draft report in August. The field investigation was coordinated with the Chippewas of the Thames First Nation as well on site. And one location of archaeological material was identified. And ARA, which is the authority, recommended no further assessment was required. So there's no major findings on the site itself. There was just one small artifact that was collected, and we'll be looking during excavation to see if there's any more, but at this point, it does not appear that there will be. The geotechnical investigation was completed just a week ago. The report was submitted. The borings were drilled earlier in the year. I think it was around July, but it was a while before we were able to get the report issued from Englobe. And it's currently under review at this point, and it's to be returned back for final edits, hopefully by the end of this week. That's just an aerial picture, a photograph of the site itself and the actual existing conditions of the site where the water tower will actually sit. So scope of works for the elevated tank, I just put a quick outline here of what we'll be looking at in terms of the contract specifications and the tender documents. Mobilization and site preparation work, which should be the environmental work. That will include the topsoil stripping of the site, any removals of brush or trees that are in the way of the structure. Then we'll be looking at the construction itself, elevated storage tank with a minimum working capacity of 1,600 meters cubed. And that would include a ground level valve room, potentially an upper valve room, piping within the structure and the tank, protective tank coatings, and all related tank appurtenances and accessories. So we're looking at a 300 millimeter diameter inlet. We'll also have an outlet water main connections, valves, and appurtenances, and overflow piping, drainage piping, and outlets. We've also incorporated a bulk water filling station. That's for haulage of water, where trucks can come in and fill up with water. There'll be a system established in terms of billing and access to the customers that will be looking to fill up with bulk water. We'll also be looking at instrumentation, electrical, SCADA, and mechanical works. The site works itself will include grading an overflow retention area to contain some of the overflow from the tank through various operations, yard piping, asphalt entrance, driveway, and parking area, some minor landscaping, fencing, and entrance gate. And then there'll be site cleanup and restoration, and then testing, commissioning, and final completion of the project and handover to the municipality. Oops, sorry, my finger's a little fast there. Let's go there. Here's our site plan that we've laid out now. We've submitted that. We've had some discussion with Jonathan on this as well, just to make sure that we've got everything incorporated. But you'll see West Corner Drive on the left-hand side of the screen. We'll have a new access driveway, which will basically be constructed within the existing easement where the pipeline is for the connection to Lake Huron primary water supply system. We'll have a turnaround area for the larger trucks that will come into the bulk water station, which is located just in this small little island here. So trucks will be able to come in off of West Corner Drive, down the laneway, and then turn around this area, fill up, and then leave the site. Within the site itself, we'll also have a driveway entrance into the tower. Now the tower is shown here in terms of the support structure is a solid structure, and the dotted structure in there is the outline of the steel tank above, just to give you an idea in terms of the area that we'll be utilizing for construction. We also have to make sure that there's enough area around the perimeter of the steel tank to facilitate future maintenance on the structure itself. Hopefully not for 20 to 30 years down the road before any repainting is required, but there's enough room in here to set up scaffolding when those activities are required, or any other types of inspections. I talked earlier just about the retention area. It would be in the top right-hand corner of the site here. It would allow us to overflow the tank or drain the tank or do any flushing operations in the facility itself. And that would be flushed out through an outfall that would flow through this retention area. And there'd be provision in there that we could dechlorinate any water if it was chlorinated water before it was discharged out to the drainage swale, and then ultimately out to the creek. Some of the design features that we've looked at in the facility itself, We're looking to incorporate a pressure reducing valve for bypassing the tank. Currently, right now, the village, the Elsi Craig service area, is serviced through a pressure reducing chamber and a valve. We're hoping to move that into the valve room so that it's above grade and much easier to control and set in the future. That'll just make operations a lot more smooth. Also, we'll be looking at site security fencing around our facility with a swing gate or a slide gate entrance for easier access into the facility. And again, the bulk water filling station will have its own separate metered water service connection off the outlet main, so that those customers who want to fill up, they'll be able to record the volume of water used, and then the municipality will be able to bill them accordingly. So here's an idea of terms of what the tank is looking at, or is proposed at this point. We're looking at a concrete support pedestal that'll be supported on a concrete foundation, which will bear on native soil, roughly about 4 to 6 feet below the grade of the existing ground. We'll be looking at a separate inlet-outlet riser, which will take water from the ground through the pipe, that's outside in the yard pipes, and take it right up to the elevated tank. So if you look at the right-hand side of the sort of section through the tower, you'll see the 2 pipes that are coming up right now, the inlet and the outlet pipe itself. So it'll come from outside, it'll come in through the chamber, and then basically right up inside the tower for the inlet. The inlet pipe will be up higher, and it will have a series of jets off it to promote circulation of the water inside the tower. So the water will come up through those jets and circulate around the entire perimeter of the tank on the inside. And then the outlet portion will be a pipe that'll draw off the bottom level of the tower, and it'll be a separate line. So we can ensure that all the water going through the tower will actually be circulated, well circulated, and we will be drawing fresh water out from the tower back into the village. So everything that comes into the tower will go back to Elsi Craig community for service under normal operations. There will be a ladder inside the concrete shaft all the way from the top of the valve room right up to a top landing, which will provide us access to the lower hatches and also an access tube with a ladder inside it as well that will allow us access right up to the roof. So if you're climbing up the tower, you'd come up the ladder, be able to stand on the rest platform at the top if you had work to do at that level, or continue to climb up right up to the top of the tank and then on the roof structure itself. We'll also be looking to provide provisions for antenna mounts for future antennas or communication systems. And we'll have cabling up there, cable trays provided so that there'll be ease of installation if and when the need arises for any of those kind of installations in the future. We'll have an exterior drip edge on the tank, which will be outside, and the drip edge will likely just be above the cone section in here. And what that does is it tends to move any water accumulation on the tower or from the roof, and it pushes it away from the cone section and obviously on the ground. So one of the problems we've had in the past with the towers is that if the water accumulates on the cone section, it can stay there for a period of time because the sun doesn't always hit it, and you can get a growth of mold and a sort of a green color that discolors the tank and makes it look like it's rusting. So the drip edges we put in there now around the facility, right around the circumference, helps to mitigate against that. Oops, so sorry, just pushing again. So we're looking at a few options for the valve room. We're looking at 1 or 2 level valve rooms shown on the left-hand side of the drawing in here, where the circulation piping will come in on the 2nd level. And then we'll have an inlet pipe on the right-hand side, which will go right up to the top, and an outlet pipe where the flow will be coming down the pipe and then out to the system itself. And there'll be a series of control valves and isolation valves within the valve rooms. And we'll be able to actually supply Elsi Craig directly from the pipeline connection to Lake Huron through the chamber through a temporary bypass line with the pressure reducing valve, which is shown here on the lower section. So when the tank's out of service for maintenance or inspection purposes, we'll be able to isolate it completely and still get flow going through the town, so there won't be any disruption in supply. If we're looking at the right-hand side of the slide here, you'll see the inside of the tower here, showing the inlet works coming up on the right-hand side. These are the 3 nozzles. There's 3 to 4 nozzles that will be sized in here that will take the water and shoot it out this way and circulate it around. The outlet pipe here isn't shown, it's hidden behind the access tube, but it would be just above the tank floor here. And it would, that's the pipe right here. And it would again ensure that the water drawn out of the tower would come from the circulated water and then out through the pipe itself. We also have an overflow pipe in the event that the tank should ever be overfilled. And that would capture the water at this point and then take it down a dedicated overflow pipe out to our retention area itself. So some of the features that will be included would be the hydrodynamic mixing system, which I explained here, the interior tank access ladder, which will be from the top, so that you can actually enter the tank from the top level for inspection purposes in the future. There'll be an interior tank painter's rail as well, so that any scaffolding requirements for future maintenance will be readily hooked up to that system, so that again, you can provide complete access within and out, inside and outside the tower itself. And we'll also be looking at roof stiffeners to carry the antenna loadings as well, because there's a lot of wind force on antennas depending on the type of antenna. So we want to make sure that everything's accommodated for those future installations. We'll also be looking at an interior cathodic protection system. That's a backup to the coating systems, again, to protect against any type of corrosion should there be any localized failure of the coating inside the tower or any other potential areas where there could be some rusting in the future. Okay, so the interior valve rooms and the layouts that we've shown here are just 2 sort of clips. Again, the inlet tank level control will be on the main pipe coming up. There will be a meter on that line, which will be able to record the flow on a regular basis. We'll also have a control valve that will allow us to modulate the flow rate into the water tower so that we can devise separate operating scenarios for winter operation versus summer operation. So in winter operation, you want to make sure that your tank fills at a lower rate so that you get continued mixing within the tower. And in the summertime, you're looking at a much quicker fill rate because you've got higher demand, you've got lawn watering and other issues within the municipality that tend to turn over the tank a lot faster. So we want to be able to make sure we can replenish the water at a much faster rate during those hot summer months. Again, I think I've talked about all the appurtenances already, so we'll move on. I can answer questions on those afterwards. The roof layout itself at the very top will have access railing all the way around the circumference of the roof. It will also have some walkways, dedicated walkways and non-slip areas that are shown in yellow. Those are so that the future maintenance operations or any kind of communications in the future will be able to move around the top roof without causing any damage to the coating systems themselves. There'll be hatches up there that need to be inspected on a regular basis. There'll be aircraft warning light on the top as well. Pretty well, there's a vent up on the top as well. And those will be the things that need to be inspected on a routine basis. Moving forward, we talked about emergency storage considerations, the fact that the minimum size requirement for the Elsi Craig tank based on 2019 flows is 1,600 meters cubed. That's 352,000 imperial gallons. For us who remember gallons, that's a good sized tank for the community that we have in there. But when we looked at the standards for water storage and the best practices in the industry, there is a check that's normally done for emergency supplies that or emergency storage for supplies that are strictly based on one supply location, such as your pipeline from the Lake Huron primary water system. And what's generally recommended in the industry is 2 days of average day demand within your storage facility. So for instance, if Lake Huron is doing a scheduled shutdown that's going to be more than 24 hours, You would then have enough storage capacity in your water storage facility to last a full 2 days before you would have to replenish any water in that tower. And that's a standard that's used for a lot of municipalities, including Lake Huron Primary Water Supply System. So looking through their master plan, they're looking to ensure that they can provide that level of emergency storage within their system as well. So if we do provide the full 2 days of emergency storage, it would increase the total storage capacity of the tower by about 300 meters cubed. Not a lot, but it would take it up to about 1,900 meters cubed. And that's roughly 418,000 imperial gallons. And that would give you full security when the tank is filled to the top normal water level for 2 days of average day demand within the service area itself. The other scenario we looked at is if there was any desire or partnership with Lake Huron to provide some additional storage within the tank to cover their existing deficit that they have at the McGilvery Reservoir of that 700. That would take our total capacity from the 1,600 up to 2,300 meters cubed. And that would be roughly about 500,000 imperial gallons, 500,000 gallons in that tank for that. So that would be to cover that additional 700 meters cubed capacity. Again, to ensure that there's more emergency storage provided within the system. Although it would be in the secondary system, it would still be counted as emergency storage within their overall system itself. So looking forward, we've had some discussions as what is the right size. It will obviously have an impact on the configuration. And our recommendation to Jonathan at this point was to tender the project on the minimum size and request an extra overcost for the oversizing of the two alternatives up to 1,900 meters cubed, the extra 300, or the extra 700 meters cubed, and then have an evaluation in terms of the cost versus the benefits for having the additional storage capacity there. There may be even some discussion with Lake Huron in terms of some cost sharing for that additional 700 meter cube capacity required. We've done this particular sort of option and oversizing on several tanks. Oakville was one that I did as well, where we went up to anywhere from 1 million to 1.5 million gallons. And at the end of the day, the region ended up going for the mid-range because economically it made sense. It provided some additional storage beyond their short-term or their 20-year needs. And it was a reasonable cost overall. So those are the considerations, those recommendations would be brought forward after we actually have tendered the job and we see what those numbers are. In terms of tank watercolor and logo considerations, this could always be a hot discussion afterwards, but we wanted to put out a couple options, at least at this point, for discussion. Nothing's been finalized at this point, of course. Whether you want to have Elsi Craig as the name on the tower with the North Middlesex logo underneath, identifying it as a community of North Middlesex, very similar to what Chatham-Kent does with their water towers. And of course, we have options for colors. We could go with the standard North Middlesex color, the green, or we could stay with a blue color, the safety blue color that you see in a lot of the towers around in the communities. So those will be things that will be brought forward afterwards, but I wanted to show you what it would look like sort of size-wise and sort of configuration-wise as well. And I think the next I have a small video clip that I'm going to try and present. Just bear with me for 2 seconds. I think I'm going to have to stop this presentation and then just see if I can clip on it quickly. Okay. New share. Boy, this could be a little bit difficult for me to find, but
Mike, do you have the video?
I do. I can try to share it right now if you like.
that would be great if you could, Mike. I appreciate that.
Everyone can see that all right?
Yes, I can. So this is just a small video that shows the configuration for the tower and some of the key features. The tank itself, this is the 1,600 meters capacity size that we're looking at modeling. Then we have, this is the 2-level valve room. We have the option for a 1-level as well without the staircase, depending on the final configuration that we go with. But this would be inside the concrete support pedestal, just to give you some different views of the piping that's required inside. Quite extensive. It's compact, but very efficient in terms of operations. Everything, like I said, is metered. We have full control. We have a circulation pump that allows us to circulate on the inlet. There's your water coming in, shown in green. So this would be your main flow coming in. And we'd have our main flow going out of our outlet pipe itself and then into the distribution system going towards Elsi Craig. And just overview here of the overall chambers itself. So there's a bypass line in here. Again, we'd be able to bypass the tank altogether and still supply the village at a good rate. So outside the shaft, we'd have 2 main entrance doors to get into the shaft. And then the tower itself, this is just the structure we get up to the roof. And here's some details of the piping within the concrete shaft itself. Again, the upper platform towards the top goes right across. It spans the inside of the diameter of the shaft. It allows for like 2 to 3 people up there under normal operating conditions, perhaps not now with COVID, but certainly in the future. And then you have access to the hatches at the bottom of the tower as well. And then that would allow you to actually, again, climb right up to the surface of the tower. I think there's just a clip of that coming as well. Again, these are all modeled now on 3D with the actual contract drawings, but here's how we'd look at the top of the tower as well. There'd be a large vent, and we'd have our access tube is grayed out in the middle there. So that's the actual tube that you would climb through with a ladder. And the piping that's shown there is on the outside of the access tube. And there's your overflow, there's your inlet pipes coming out showing the direction of flow. Of course, nothing would come out of the tank. It would all be contained and swirled within the top area. And then your outlet would be at the bottom of the tower to ensure that water gets good mixing and then out to the customers. So on the roof itself, we'd have a railing, as I mentioned earlier, with supports out there for future brackets, antennas, lots of opportunities out there. Vents on the tower itself, and at least 2 access hatches for future maintenance and also inspection. I think that would cover pretty well just all that we had on there. We're again going to show 3 sizes in terms of here's alternative 1, and looking at alternative 2 a little bit larger again for that full 2 days of average day storage within the tower. And then alternative 3 being additional storage capacity for the Lake Huron primary water supply system. There's sort of 3 tower configurations. Final configuration will vary, but generally speaking, here's your capacities. And again, just showing the 3 options there, or 4 options for lettering on the tower. I believe that's it for the video. Great, and I'll just go back to the presentation and I want to share my screen and just bring the PowerPoint up. I guess I could do it this way. Excuse me for 1 second. There we go. All right, and am I back online again?
Yes.
Great. So we'll start right here. And next slide. So status of the design and bid documents themselves. We're moving along. These are the contract drawings that are being finalized right now to 75%. Again, a lot of civil, landscape, very minor, more the grading, mechanical, process, electrical, instrumentation, SCADA controls. We're looking, again, I'll talk a little bit about the schedule. Want just to talk a little bit about the contract specifications. Again, we follow the American Water Works. It's a standard for water storage facilities in Ontario. It's a standard D10710 composite design. We'll be following that particular code. The code that governs the design of these facilities is the Ontario Building Code, but the standard for these composite designs is the AWWA standard. They are tendered as a performance specification for the structure itself. So the tank design reflects the needs of the municipalities. Specifications outline the minimum requirements that are to be priced by the design build contractor in the base bid of the contract. And the design reflects the best options for the municipality and not necessarily for the contractor. So specifications are geared towards making sure that we have a durable tank, that all the operational features are being provided with that tower. But the actual configuration, the cone to shell proportion, the size of the shaft itself is proprietary. It's through the contractors themselves, and it's a design build. However, we do specify all of the design criteria from wind loadings, weight, and everything else. There's even earthquake loadings that are specified to ensure that the tank is going to be standing there for the next 60 to 80 years without any issues. So we're preparing those contract specifications, and we're at about 75% expected by the end of next week, and then we'll have everything completed for the bid documents by the end of November. Again, just a note here on the design build contract, that is the standard for all elevated tanks in Ontario. There is no other standard that we follow. I've done probably close to 30 myself in my history of consulting. And Martin has been involved in many rehabs as well over the last 3 years at least, if not a little bit longer than that. So updated construction cost estimate and schedule. Here's the updated breakdown of our pre-tender or pre-bid, where we are right now at 75% complete. We're looking at, with all the divisions included, a subtotal of about 3.6 million for the elevated tank and all the site works. That includes the bulk water depot, part of the water main extension from the tower out to the road itself, and connections to the existing 8-inch main. If you look at the oversizing right now for the 2-day average, which would be the second option we're looking at, the 1900, there's probably a premium price of around $20,000. Sorry, yeah, 20,000 on that. Sorry, I'll just go back to my right number here. From about 3.6 to 3.8, it's 200,000, excuse me. And then when you're looking at the larger tower to cover the 700-meter deficit in the Lake Huron system, we'd be looking at just over 4 million subtotal. Then there's provisional and engineering on top of that. So we could be looking at about 4.3 million for the base bid price of the tower. And again, that includes a lot of contingency built into there right now as we are completing the design work itself. I also noted that we just received the geotechnical report. The bearing soil capacity is not as anticipated initially. It's about half of what was expected. So our foundation is going to be quite a bit bigger, and that's a large percentage of the cost itself. You'll see that in the sort of the concrete work, but it's also carried under the Division 13 special construction, which is the elevated tank price itself. So the base bid price for the elevated tank is roughly about $1.9 million. So without any of the valve room, the miscellaneous metals, any of the site works, the water main connections, any of the other work that's required, our base price is just under the 2 million mark for the tower itself. And then I'll look at, we did a preliminary cost estimate just for continuing to replace the 8-inch water main on Queen Street, right from the tower site all the way down to Old Highway 7. We're looking at roughly about 1.3 kilometers, 1.4 kilometers of a 12-inch main. We've carried an allowance of $450 per meter, roughly an estimate of around 1.13 million, including HST. Without HT, it's just over $1 million with the engineering, and about a 20% contingency on that as well. So with the updated schedule, we're looking at 75% design submission for October, the end of next week, 100% design submission for the bid documents and contract drawings for November 26. Then we'll be looking for final approvals, a bid call as early as January if council intends to proceed in 2021. with an award likely in around March is the earliest that would move, and with a commenced construction around May 2021. I've got a completion date in here of June 2022. With the elevated tanks, it is possible to complete them in 8 to 9 months, but it all depends on the time of year and the weather conditions throughout construction. So as you can appreciate, there's a lot of concrete poured for the foundation and shaft. If the weather is good, we can get through in a relatively quick period, and that allows us to set up for the welding on the tank on site. But again, what usually causes the problem are the winter months. They certainly slow down the steel erection and fabrication on site, and prohibit the painting of the tower, the coating of the tower. So generally speaking, we allow for an allowance in there of a shutdown during December, January, February, and then a recommencement back in March with the coating operations completed and the tank filled by the June date in there. So, and then we look at a 2-year maintenance period on the tower itself, just to ensure the integrity of the coating system and all the equipment that is being provided. We do a 1-year inspection with the contractor and the operator and the municipality. And then we don't normally drain the tank at that point, but we may do a video inspection with remote cameras inside the tank just to make sure there's no deficiencies with the coating systems. And then at the end of the 2-year maintenance period, we usually recommend that we drain the tank completely, open it up, and make sure that we do a thorough investigation, inspection at the end. And if there are any deficiencies, they would be cleaned up at that point. So that sort of gives you an idea in terms of the time frame. It's a project that will take some time. Just before we get on to the question in, there is the opportunities, of course, to look for funding down the road. We'll be in a position that we'll be able to demonstrate to the ministry that this project would be shovel ready or shovel worthy in terms of its priority for emergency supply, fire protection to the community. So there are a lot of other avenues that we can look at as well in terms of trying to secure that funding. I've had discussions with Jonathan as well, and I understand you did have a meeting at the AMO conference in August this year. We do understand that the next round of funding is coming out in December for the Green Fund, but the details still haven't been made available yet. So if there's a need and a desire to look at putting an application together for the tower, we're certainly available to assist the municipality in getting that together as well. So with that note, I could open to questions. Hopefully I haven't gone too long.
So if I can get the screen back, we'll go to questions from council. And I don't think you went too long. This is a large project that we have planned, and we need to take the time and make sure we do it right. So questions from council. Who'd like to start? Councillor Hemming.
Yeah, Tom, just in regards to the SCADA equipment and system, will that have to be tied in with the Lake Huron systems as well? So they monitor it too, or no?
If, the SCADA system itself will be fairly simple for the elevated tank. It basically monitors tank level, pressures, and residuals. And it can be monitored anywhere depending on the final arrangement for the SCADA. That's been subcontracted out to Aramosa Engineering through this contract as well. So we'll be going through that, and there'll be options that there's lots of options. It could be monitored at the wastewater plant in Elsi Craig, could be in Park Hill, could be in Aqua, could also have remote access from all their computers as well. So typically it's a system that you'll be able to get into as an operator and monitor those levels, those operating conditions, and make changes if you need to. So we'll have the ability to open up valves, fill the tower, drain the tower, do other things as well.
Okay. Yeah, so we don't need to tie it in with Lake Huron's monitoring system, right?
No, it'll be strictly independent, but it'll have access, remote access as well. It'll be the municipality system 100%.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and on that note too, with regards to the asking them for funding, it was declined. You got one vote anyway, guys. So. Sorry to say, we can try again though.
Just as a note, sorry, I was going to say on the funding.
Go ahead.
We were successful on several water storage facility projects in the past, in the last year and a half. I think Petrolia was one where we were able to get them close to 75% funding on their reservoir for exactly the same reason as your project's going ahead. It was a lack of emergency storage for a large service area. And I think if we could tie in your project to the benefit for the entire service area in terms of having that storage available within your system and access to it through bulk water depot, through other means, interconnections, would be a good way to raise some priority with the ministry, the various ministries.
Correct. Thank you. Other questions from council? Deputy Mayor Ellison.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Tom, a very interesting presentation. I enjoyed it very much. It's very informative. I was really pleased to hear the potential of a 75% funding possibility, given the overall proposed cost of the project, which seems to be a little bit higher than when it was first presented to council some few months ago. I do have some questions for you that I didn't feel or hear in the proposal. That was the height of the tower, and if it's gravity filled.
Well, sorry, the height, Martin, you can correct me, but I believe it's 120 feet or roughly around approximately that height. You're right. I should have had the dimensions shown on the plan there. We'll correct that for next one. In terms of, sorry, what was the other part? It was the height.
How is a tank filled?
Oh, okay. It will be, I can say gravity fed, but it's not really gravity fed. It's piped from Lake Huron system. So they pump the system from the Grand Bend water treatment plant. So it'll flow directly through the transmission main into your main. So currently right now, we'll be able to control the pressure coming into the tower with our control valve and our flow rates going in. So there won't be any additional pumping required. And everything from the tower to the village will be out the separate segregated outlet riser and piping, and that will all be by gravity. So there'll be no piping to the community itself.
Okay, I have two more questions. The other is the size of the tank, and how that was assessed or evaluated. When you came up with the size, is that based on the population of the community today or projecting future growth?
It's based on a future growth over the infill of some of the development areas of around 1,000 people. So that was what was presented in the EA. We've carried the same numbers going forward. The only adjustments we've made to make sure as we move forward now that we're designing is that it's based on current flows today. And then there's a projection for future flows as well. So it will accommodate growth, and the 2 days average day demand would be based on that future population with that additional 1,000 people included.
Wonderful. And my final question, at the end of your report, you addressed the maintenance cost to repairing deficiencies. Who would be covering the costs of repairing any deficiencies if it was built according to design?
Well, in terms of deficiencies, we're looking at equipment failure or coating failures and those kind of things, or any areas that would rust or cause a maintenance issue. And those would all be covered under the contract price itself. So there'd be no additional cost to the municipality to rectify those deficiencies. Typically on a job, it's usually 1 year maintenance period, but with the elevated storage facilities, we always like to see the 2 year, because we want to ensure the integrity of that coating system and that it's held up. And it usually it's a year and beyond. But I will tell you, the coating systems we're seeing today are much superior to some of the ones I saw 20 years ago, and that we're recoding now 20 to 25 years later. And we put in a very rigorous quality control program during the coating systems themselves to ensure that they're not placing them when the humidity is too high or the conditions aren't proper for the type of coatings that we're going to put in. So there will be a lot of inspection, specialized inspection. The other thing that we really focus on are the weld inspections as well. The tanks are complete. The tank is completely fabricated on site. The pieces of the tank will be shipped to the site. It'll be fabricated at the base of the of the tower and welded. And the quality of the welding is really going to determine the durability of that tank in the future. So we do radiographic inspection, we do visual inspection, mostly non-destructive testing. But again, we'll have a specialized welding inspection on that all the time to ensure that quality is there. And generally speaking, if you have good inspection during those installations, fabrication, you'll have less trouble with your coating systems, because typically the coating systems will fail at the weld sections themselves. That's sort of the experience that we've seen over the years.
And that just brought up another question. So with the welding inspections, will your firm be conducting those inspections?
No, those are third parties, licensed inspectors. We have pricing already set for those. Typically, again, we do the minimum requirement, but if we do find failures, then the contractor is responsible for retesting afterwards. So any failures that we encounter or see that the contractor has to go back and fix, and then it's their cost to have them re-inspected again.
Thank you.
Other questions from council? Councillor Nickel
Yeah,
and
so
Councillor Moore.
that was an amazing presentation, but a lot of stuff I don't understand. So just a quick question. So gravity fed, I understand that. If we went without hydro, so if you have enough water for 2 days, what if the hydro is off for 2 or 3 days? Does that affect it?
No, it would not. It would affect us in terms of there wouldn't be any lights on necessarily or anything else. We had some discussions with regards to the control valve. So the control valve will be automated, again, hydraulically and electronically. So we have a backup system in the event of a power failure. So basically speaking, the valve will always open and close to fill the tower from the main pipeline when it's needed. So you'll operate your tower within a given height of water. When it gets to a low level, the valve will open and fill to the high water level. The way we've got it set up now is that the valve itself, if there is a power failure, will fail open, which means it'll open wide open. And then there's another control valve upstream that will limit the amount of water that we can fill the tower to, in other words, up to the overflow level itself. So there will always be a full tank of water sitting there during a power outage. And then when the power comes back on again, it would be back to normal operation. So there is no need for any standby power generation at the tower itself. But obviously, if it was for a longer period of time and it was in the dead winter, we want to ensure that we were able to get some backup power to the site itself, just for the heaters inside and the heat tracing on the pipes.
Thank you. And the other question I had, to dechloride the water if you have to let it go.
Yes.
How quickly is that done, and at what amount of water are you looking at?
Well, again, sorry. It depends again on the operation you're looking at. Typically, the standards that we follow for the American Water Works, and as well as the industry standard with the Ministry of the Environment for dechlorinating and chlorinating water storage facilities. Typically what happens is it's a very high chlorinated level when you start filling the tower for disinfection, so that the majority of the floor in the tank is disinfected in the cone section itself. And as the tower fills, the residual and the chlorine concentration drops to an acceptable level. So the goal is not to put too much chlorine in when you're disinfecting the tank under normal operations, so that when the tank is filled, it's up to 2 parts per million, which is not a very high concentration. In fact, your water coming from Lake Huron, I believe, is around 1 part per million or 1 milligrams per liter of chlorine. So at that point, what would happen is we would tend to drop the level in the tower. It would go through the pond, and they would dechlorinate it before it got discharged. And it's dechlorinated with hydrogen peroxide pucks. It's just a small, a few pucks that are put in a basket that the water flows through, and it dissipates any chlorine right down to zero. So again, these are regulated sort of requirements, and we'll follow those and ensure that we're never discharging a high concentration of chlorine into the environment. And again, we always have the ability to dechlorinate even a high level. If it ever did have to get discharged to our retaining area, we would be able to dechlorinate. So it's a very simple process. Your operators currently do it all over the place, and it's pretty well standard for every elevated tank.
Thank you.
Councillor Moyer, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just looking back at your cost estimate. Now, is that just for the construction cost? So the third-party inspections and your consulting fees, that would all be over and above this, or is it included?
It was included in the bottom line. So there was a total construction cost, and then there was a contingency, and then there was engineering, which was all of the inspection as well for this third party.
Okay, that engineering. Okay, yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Was that it, Mark? Question? Yep. Other questions from council? Councillor Keel.
There we go. We're on. Thanks, Tom. I just have one question. I see on your estimate the pipeline replacement from the water tower to the village of Elsi Craig at 1.1 is an estimate type thing. Is the supply line to the water tower, is it up to spec? And if it isn't, is that on the Lake Huron end of, is it a Lake Huron water supply cost, or is it up to us?
I will tell you what I think it is, and I think it's your cost. I think you own the pipeline all the way up to the main transmission main. Typically, for all the secondary users, it's right at the main. There's a chamber where everything is kind of connected to the main big pipeline out there, and then everything's yours afterwards.
Okay.
So in terms of the condition of the pipe out there, we don't know the condition of that pipe yet. We will have a good idea when we connect to it. But at this point, that pipeline is an 8-inch. And Jonathan, unless you know the age of that one, I don't have it handy. We will have the ability to do further inspection if we encounter any concerns with regards to the integrity of the pipe material itself.
I guess I was just concerned if there needed to be any upgrade for this tower.
At this point, not from the Lake Huron system to the tower, but certainly from the tower to the village, primarily because the 8-inch main is too small. That's one of the driving forces for the main to be replaced. To get the fire flow through that pipe, you'll lose a lot of pressure because it's a smaller diameter and it's a bit older. There's more material built up inside the pipe. So we're looking at a 12-inch main all the way into town, which will provide you with a fairly high level of fire flow throughout the service area.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Other questions from members of council? Okay, thank you, Tom. I do have a couple. The bringing up to Councillor Keogh's point, doing the water tower won't put more stress on that pipe coming in, will it?
No.
It won't affect that feed pipe, so it won't put more pressure on it. But I was wondering about the size, talking about the size of the tower. After hearing Councillor Hemming said that, I believe you said Huron Pipeline has said no to that extra cost for storage. So that leaves that option too. My fear would be that we would build it too small, but I have been told, talking to staff, that you don't want to go too big as well, because that's a different problem. But for the cost of the percentage change from 1 to 2, like to have 2 full days of storage, to me that's a small amount for in the entire cost of the project. So I'm wondering what would be the downsides to going to that second option.
To me, there's really not much of a change, and the fact is, you could actually adjust your operating levels in the tower not to use it if you didn't need it for all the year, especially as your population grows. You don't need the full amount year 1. You'll need it by year 20. But I think with the way we designed that inner piping system within the tower now ensures much better circulation than what we used to do 25 years ago. So there's a lot better flexibility in terms of movement of water. So typically the fear was that the water will sit there for 3 days and not move if you have it too big. And now that's not really the case. So we actually have put in a small circulation system internally as well. Depending on the time of year, depending on the demands within Elsi Craig, the operator can make a judgment call and actually run a circulation pump that takes water out of the outlet pipe, which is directly from the tower, and pumps it back into the inlet pipe. So it goes through those nozzles again and moves that water around. So again, it tends to keep that water fresher and moving, and it allows you then to operate at a better level. And the other thing that we can do with more volume in there is you can operate at a much wider range, so that again, you can control how much water goes into your tank at different periods of the year. And if we're finding that the water is not draining as fast as we'd like it to, we can go to a much lower level in the tower, still have a good amount of storage, and then fill at a slower rate so that you're not filling it too quickly to let it sit there for another 12 hours. So those will be operational enhancements that we've sort of built into the design now that will allow a lot of flexibility for operations in the future.
Okay, thank you. because as much as I don't want to waste money, I mean, it's $200,000, but my biggest fear is, and I've talked to some other mayors where they built water towers and they weren't big enough. And now they're faced with the same problem. They don't have enough water storage, but here they have a water tower.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that we size that thing for the future. My last question, I think, would be, you talked about either a 1 floor or a 2 floor valving level. Why would it be, what's the decision on that? Like, wouldn't one level be cheaper, I guess, to say?
It possibly could. We have a layout worked out for that as well. I just didn't have it in the 3D model to show you. But basically, the 2 level allows for more room in and around the equipment for monitoring and flow. But I think given the sizes that we're working with right now, I think we have a floor plan that may work better on a 1 floor level, which is typical what you see. We normally have a 2nd floor is if we have extra equipment or valving for bypasses, and because we're bringing in that sort of tank bypass line with that pressure reducing valve, it made it really tight initially. We have electrical works that go in the station as well. So I'll be discussing that with Jonathan and probably later this week, just in terms of another option as well that I think might work and might get us to 1 level, but it'll be a tall room. So the ceiling would still be like 3 meters, almost 10 feet to the ceiling. And that would allow us to mount a lot of the equipment vertically and utilize some of that riser piping space.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council? Yes, Deputy Mayor Cornelison.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. I do have one final question. We're talking about this as the Elsi Craig Water Tower. Now, as you know, Nairn is in pretty close proximity to Elsi Craig. Would this tower service Nairn as well?
Nairn's serviced off a different system. It comes in, I believe, correct me, Jonathan, does it come in through the Strathroy line?
Yeah, the south end does, and the top end comes from Denfield.
Yep, but the systems are interconnected. So in the event of a outage in Nairn, which I know very well as well, going back a few years when we did the sewer system there, we could feed it. It would just have to be fed at a lower rate, and there would need a pressure reducing chamber, because as you come down the hill from the water tower to Elsi Craig to Nairn, there's a bit of a change in elevation, and there's the potential to even to fill beyond the service area in Elsi Craig. Right now the valves are closed because they operate on different pressure systems, but when one system is down to 0 pressure, it's easy to backfill, at least keep the mains charged to a certain level. So there are some options. It'll take a little bit of time to get all that modeling together to figure out exactly what can be done, but having the storage available and the ability to haul water from the bulk water depot would certainly make it a lot more convenient to get water around that service area.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council? No other questions? Thank you, Tom. That was a great presentation. We learned a lot from him, and there were some good questions. Thank you very much for your time.
You're more than welcome. And again, have a great meeting.
You too. Have a good night.
Bye now.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going into departmental reports, I believe. And so we have another good discussion coming forward, and that's deferred from March 11th, the water and wastewater rates, council presentation from March 11th. And that rate study report was Watson and Associates. And so Tracy, I believe you're going to bring this forward. Is that right?
Yeah, the report is recommending the approval of the water, wastewater, and storm rates that were presented to council in late 2019 and early 2020. The report is recommending that these rates become effective in 2021 and that the billing is based on the 100% recovery option. Also, the report is recommending that in order to fulfill the motion 67-2020 that resulted from the water budget presentation in early 2020, staff is suggesting a 3-week period for public feedback, which will commence with an informational mail out and public notice on our social media. Staff has attached to the report the Watson Associate rate study for council's refresher, along with a draft information sheet. This sheet will be updated with the amounts adopted by council tonight in order to be mailed out for the public feedback. Are there any questions for staff?
All right, questions? No questions? Hard to believe. Deputy Mayor Canellis.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Tracy, when you say you're looking for approval, are you looking for the approval of the long-term rates over the next period of several years, or just the immediate rate for 1 year?
For 1 year, we plan on bringing the rates back every year after we reconcile the previous year's budgets. So it'll be an ongoing water rate.
Okay, so and I'm trying to find it here on my computer, but can you just refresh my memory? What type of increase are we looking at for 2021?
It was around 50%, John?
50,
Yeah, about 60%.
60%. Okay, so for the average homeowner, what are we looking at in terms of dollars, Jonathan?
The total combined bill is, so to the point, we're going back to the 2020 rate. We're not jumping to the 2021 rate. We're going to take the 2020 rate, make it or active January 1st. So the total combined bill will be $1,751. That's if you're on both water and wastewater and are serviced by storm. That's all three.
Yeah.
Okay, so and that's for the urban areas, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So quarterly, you're looking at about $400, $450.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, I think it was
About 440, I think, isn't it? Something like
just
that.
under 437.75 is what I got.
Okay, and currently it's what, about 300 and some, or what is it currently?
It would be
Around 200 and something, I believe.
yeah, 270,
Yeah.
280, I think, in and around there.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's almost double. It's going to almost double.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
And it also is introducing a storm rate, which we've never had before.
Well, do all the communities have stormwater? Like, I mean, like Nairn, do they even have a stormwater system?
It won't be for every user. It'll only be on certain bills, but there will be a storm rate on those particular users.
The storm rate is $68 flat rate for the year.
Only if
Basically,
you have,
in urban centers. So basically Nairn, Elsi Craig, and Park Hill.
if they have access to the stormwater system, right? But not everyone in town has that, do they?
Most everybody in those towns has some sort of stormwater system fronting them.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Moyer, did you have your hand up?
I did.
So the waters just go to a flat rate then? There'll be no consumption charge with the volume of water used?
There will be a reconciliation at year end because the way the Watson Associates did the rate, it's based on a 3-year average. So, and it's broken into buckets. So if you go over into the next bucket, like the first bucket is 0 to 250, which would be most people. If they go over that, there'll be a charge for the overage on the last billing of the year, and then they might be put up to the next bucket for the following year.
Okay, I guess that could be a little hard on the rural areas that have large consumption of water for livestock operations, and that all of a sudden get hit with a bill at the end of the year. I'd have some concerns with that.
It could be reconciled. It could be reconciled in the fourth quarter, Councillor Moore, or it could be brought over to the next year. We haven't necessarily finalized the details of that, but we do understand what you're talking about. All of a sudden, you have to reconcile, 3 quarters in the fourth.
What would that rate be for over 250? What?
It depends. It's like basically the way this is set up is like income tax brackets. So the more you consume, the higher the bracket, the more the cost is. It's marginal to what their consumption was before, and what the bills were, and the increments going up are all basically the same. But when you go into the next bracket, you get an automatic flat rate adjustment to that bracket.
Okay, so it's not I'm going to use gallons. It's not a liter. It's not a charge per liter or a charge per gallon or anything. It's
no, I don't think so.
or cubic,
Through your worship,
whatever.
Schedule B identifies the brackets, Councillor Moyer. So 250 to 300 is the next one after 250, and it's at $1,150. And then again, it just keeps going in incremental steps of 100 after that, until you get around the breaking point of 600 liters, cubic meters, and this is per year, where you transition from 600 to 800. And then after 1,000, you start going into the 1,000 to 1,500 bracket. So it's incremental steps. I do respect your expression that this is a hard decision to make in terms of doing reconciliation for the billing mechanism for large consumers. But this is something that we need to consider in pointing the municipality in the right direction to funding our programs and our water main distribution network on a whole.
Yeah, it'd be nice if there was an easier way of easing that into them, and even if it was on a quarterly basis rather than one lump at the end of the year as well.
We could do it twice a year. We could analyze it twice a year and see where they're heading. But according to GAP, I have to bill out the revenue for the expenses we paid for. So if we've purchased the water in 2021, I have to also record the revenue that coincides with it in 2021. So that's my basis on having to reconcile at the end of the year, and also to put them in the right bracket going forward for the next year. So maybe we could reconcile in June to see where they're heading. I don't think anybody's ever going to go over where they're at, because we have taken a 3-year average. So I don't think there's not going to be a lot of people that end up over their usage. I can't see it anyways. Do you think so, John?
No. So, 250 cubic meters a year. The average home uses, give or take, 100 to 150, and we've buffered it to 250. So basically, double, if not, 40% higher than what they would actually use. So the likelihood of them going out, the large base of our consumer, it's slim to none. But the revenue it would be extremely difficult to reconcile it twice a year, in that they would bump up and then bump back, and the whole rate study isn't based on revenue like that. No. It's based on more of a set schedule in terms of a 12-month, fiscal year of December, and then moving on.
Well, they're metered, aren't they? We would know what their consumption was every month.
Absolutely, we would.
But the billing module is based on up to 250 for the year. So by the end of July, let's say, they could have used more than half, but then they slow down for the rest of the year. And then if we build them for over and they end up under, then we owe them
money.
That's what John's getting at.
It's extremely difficult. The reason for the 100% revenue is due to the variability of the cubic meter rate. So due to the constraints and what we're facing in the system over the next 15, 20 years, we need to shore up revenue, which is why the proposal for the 100% flat rate came into play. The variable rate puts way too much variability in revenue. And you can look at any utility for that matter. The variability, it goes through. Dry years, less revenue. Dry years, more revenue.
Oh,
yeah. That's the logic of it.
Okay, Gord?
Okay, yeah.
Maybe not okay, but did you get what the answer you want?
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor McClinchy, you had your hand up, I believe.
Okay, Tracy, when it goes out to public review, what all is stated in the public review? Is that just for what is happening, or do they have input in this, or how does that work?
I'm going to pass that over to Jonathan, because him and Mike, I think, are going to be discussing that on Friday. So,
through your worship, because of the circumstances of COVID-19, we're not really able to facilitate a public information center or a public open house. due to the gathering restrictions because of the pandemic. As you can recall, this was a proposed rate that was supposed to be in place for December 19th.
Yeah.
We're pushed, or not, sorry, effective in January or March of this year, 2019. We've
Yeah.
deferred this till 2021, or so that we can have the opportunity to discuss it and give proper notice. This will be the second round that the general public has been notified to the effect that the increase in rates is coming. And we're going to be mailing out something similar to what was attached to the report, the important notice, the effective January 2021, information pamphlet, and then where we are in regards to our landscape review with the other municipalities. And then we're going to set up a email address and receive public information and correspondence by them submitting to the email address or mailing in correspondence for a period of 3 weeks. So that's why the third motion of the report has been included, because we have to satisfy council's direction previously from March of this year. And insofar, this is the best way that we can do it in light of the pandemic.
So when would this change take effect, like the increase? Will
January 1, 2021.
Oh, not that far from now. Yeah. Okay.
So they would get it in their first bill in January. In March, they would get that. They would get that.
March.
Councillor Nickel, you had your hand up.
Oh, that's okay. They actually answered my question, so.
You got your answer?
Yes, sir.
Deputy Mayor Cornelison, you had your hand up as well.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. My question is for Jonathan. And Jonathan, just to echo Councillor Moore's concerns, and I take no issue with the residential use at all. I think your logic makes perfect sense there. However, when it comes to livestock operations, and there's currently a couple barns under construction. One's a cattle operation, is probably going to house about 2,000 or 3,000 head of cattle, or a pig barn that holds 10,000 pigs. And to reconcile that water bill at the end of the year is going to be substantial. I mean, it's going to be significant. Is there any way to address those concerns on behalf of these livestock operators that they can make payments throughout the course of the year on a regular bill, because it's going to be significant?
So the understanding that there's going to be new operations on new farms, but we take an average, and the longer the data set goes, the more the average is going to be reflective of what they use. But we've got 4 or 5 years average consumption for each of these properties, farms, whatever you want to call it. And that's what it's going to be based off at the start. So,
well, I understand that, Jonathan, I do, but I mean, that's not to say that a new producer comes online and builds a barn, like a young farmer starting out, builds his own barn on one of his father's farms type of thing, takes over that business, never had a water bill before, but now he's housing 10,000 pigs. He's going to get that bill at the end of the year?
Go ahead, Jerry.
I'm assuming that what we'll do is Jonathan knows his customers, and he will take a similar operation and use that average, and then for the first billing year, and then we will start getting a basis for that barn, that operation to go forward.
And the reality of it is, if that was to come in hypothetically, let's say June, July, August of 2021, hypothetically, the bill would only be adjusted for the quarter. So it's not like they would consume 4 quarters of water because the barn wasn't in existence for 4 quarters. So it's still marginal to it.
Okay, fair enough. Well,
Yeah,
okay,
you know, like, yeah.
I understand that now. The way I understood your explanation before was that the water usage, if the barn didn't exist, there would be no bill until the end of the year for water usage.
No.
Okay. Fair enough.
Whatever,
you.
yeah, whatever.
Councillor Moyer, did you have your hand up?
I did, yeah.
Okay, and then Jonathan.
Just to clarify that for the agricultural user, you're using an average of their existing bill now, not this $854. So you're taking an average of what their consumption is, and that will be their flat rate.
That's where they start. That's where they start, Councilor Moore.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. Thank you.
Jonathan,
Just to offer some clarification,
What we're really speaking about is outlining bills. So the average that we put in the schedule, the system that John is creating is based off modeling on previous years. We're talking about somebody who goes plus or minus, up or down through that reconciliation. So the margin of those people who will be affected by that change will be not few and far between, but they're not going to be every farmer or large consumer. That's where the baseline comes from. What I can also offer council is some consideration. This is why we're proposing it as a 1 year, year-over-year calibration for our water rates. What most likely is going to happen through the next year and beyond is that we're going to constantly refine our budget, refine our rate, and most importantly, we're going to refine our policies as it relates to water. We may find in 6 months that we have to come back to council and say, these are the oddball situations that we're encountering. We now need to come up with a financial tool that allows some ease of financial burden in order for repayment schedules moving ahead. That's something that can come through, but we need to start in a direction where we're tackling our water wastewater rates appropriately.
Other questions from council? A comment I'll make, I just want to make a comment on what Jonathan said. Talking with the ministries, one thing that's showed pretty clear that you have to change your water and wastewater rates. You have to help yourselves. You can't just come to us and not do your part. I think, Jonathan, that's pretty fair to say that, and Tracy, that's something that they're all saying, that we have to have our own house in order.
Yeah.
And as much as none of us like these rates that are going forward, none of us do, but we can't kid ourselves and say it's costing us $100 if it's costing us $150. And that's just the reality of it. And I think when you mentioned about budget, Jonathan, we know if this is where the rates have to be here, it just means it's on us to be very good on our budget time, like on our budgets, and to do everything we can to help our residents and North Middlesex taxpayers on that side of it, to do the best we can on that. I just comment, I think this is the cost. It's like a user pay cost. And to me, the cost is the cost. And there's other ways that we have to implement savings, I think, to our residents. So, but Councillor Moyer, you had another question?
Yeah, just a suggestion. I wondered, you have a residential chart here. Like, can you do one for livestock operations? Like,
I believe
take
all
a few of the
the
rural properties, and I think just for public, I think it would be nice for them to see that graph
For
as well.
clarification, Councillor Moore, are you speaking to the flyer or the handout to the notice?
Yes.
Okay. Mike and I can certainly look into that in the next couple of days, and we don't, just like COVID is right now, where you can get arrowed and signed to death, we want to be mindful of the real estate that we occupy when we send this out, but we'll try to accommodate both synopses.
Okay. Thank you.
Or at least direct them in the right place to get the information.
all the brackets are there, right?
Okay. Does that get your question, Gord?
Yep.
That get you your answer? All right. Other questions from council? No other questions from council. So we have a recommendation in front of us, and that is to set those rates. Would you, Jackie, could you read that recommendation again? I'm having trouble picking up the.
Sure. So the recommendation reads that staff report entitled 2021 water, wastewater, and stormwater rates be received, and that the attached Schedule B be approved and adopted by bylaw, and that the water, wastewater, stormwater rate adjustments come into full force and effect as of January 1st, 2021, and that staff be directed to receive public feedback by written submission for a period of 3 weeks commencing upon the information mail out and publication of notice on our social media insofar as satisfying motion 67 of 2020 dated March 11th, 2020 budget meeting, and subsequent cancellation of that meeting for March 18th due to COVID-19.
Okay, any questions on it? That's our recommendation. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor McClinchy, is your hand up? I'm sorry, yeah, okay, moved by Councillor McClinchy. Seconder. Councillor Nickel. More discussion on it? I know this is a tough one. I understand that. More discussion on it? Anybody want to speak on this? Councillor McClinchy, go ahead.
Okay, now, this is a tough one. I moved it to put it on the table. But anyhow, what happens if some people are on a single income like me and a lot of other people can't pay that? What happens? And I'm not talking, I'm just talking about single individuals like that have limited income and can hardly make a go of it now. What happens?
So
I understand.
the percentage of the rate is based on basically like disposable income within the area. And what we typically see in the province of Ontario is upwards of 2%. I believe we're sitting at 1.8%. So the rates that are going to be raised, although a big increment to North Middlesex, are still well within the threshold of what everybody else in the province pays for water. So they're not outrageous in terms of the percentage of your disposable income that they take.
So
Tracy, do you mind offering anything in terms of someone going into arrears? Is that what you're getting at, Councillor McClinchy?
Yes.
So the utility billing collection policy that was just passed by council, it gives us the option after missing two payments, consecutive payments, the water bill will be put to the property taxes. So that is an option. We will try our hardest to get the money before we do that. And as we said, this rate will be looked at every year. Once we get a base budget going for all the jobs that need to be done, all the programs that we're behind on, this might not always be the rate. I'm not promising that, but we need a base rate to start to get ourselves out of this hole. And fortunately, this is a big hike and we really don't have much choice, unfortunately. So.
Okay. And I want to say, Doreen, part of this, I mean, some of this is on us as council. We had this brought to us a number of years ago, and
I remember,
and it wasn't presented to us very well, and it didn't go out very well. But we didn't raise the rates at that time, even incremental, you know, to get closer to this rate. We didn't. It sat there, and so and I have to say that I've been telling everybody that I talk to about water or anything else, these rates are coming, you know, and they're not nice. It's a big increase, but they're coming. And I don't know the alternative to it, to be perfectly honest.
Is it 50 or 60% increase?
60%.
Well, you go from
year
you
over
go
year
from
is
$100 to $140 a month.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Right?
water's
That's
a little
40% increase.
Yeah, water's a little higher than sewage, but the two
Yeah.
percentages are roughly, when you add them together, it's roughly 60, close to 60.
So, but it was approximately $100 a month to $140 a month. Is that not right? There's 142 or something like that, but 144, I think it is. But so
That's
yeah,
correct.
it's a big increase.
And it's for a year annually, the wastewater is what, about $68 annually, right? The rate of the wastewater?
That's
Stormwater.
that's the stormwater.
Yeah, so flat rate of that, yeah. But it's the increase of the water.
Yeah. So for the average homeowner, it's going to be $148.33 a month.
A month? Oh, okay, because we're billed it quarterly, so yeah.
Yeah, so you're looking at $440. Like that's the Doreen, the other thing, that's $68. Unfortunately, we have never collected money for storm drains in our built up areas, in our urban areas, and they're not in good shape. That there's certain areas that are not in good shape. And so we have to start collecting.
Well,
And
I don't have,
$68 isn't bad.
I don't have a problem with the stormwater, wastewater. It's the
Okay.
water. Not,
Yeah.
you know, that's okay, but the water, whew. Yeah.
And
I made a
can-
motion to put it on the floor to have it discussed.
Can somebody say, like, any of our surrounding, what they're at, the rates? Does somebody have information from our neighboring municipalities? Some of them?
Through your worship, Middlesex Center is higher than us. And this is the Watson report that they did an analysis on that. Thames Center is nipping at our heels. And from what I understand, Luke and Badolf is also considering a rate increase in the next couple of years, if not shortly. That will be really close to reflective of where we're at now. So we're falling in line. Back to John's point about disposable income. This is part of asset management. This is part of good management of our infrastructure. These things are coming to light. We're choosing to address them, or this council is choosing to address them head on the best of our abilities, so that we can make sure that we're not going to be hit with a larger increase the next time this conversation comes around.
Okay, thank you. And Doreen, we have inherited a water system that is so massive compared to our neighbors. It is a very large water system. And so it's a blessing and a bit of a curse at this time. So, other comments from council? We have it moved, the recommendation is moved and seconded. No other comments? All in favor of the rate increase, of the recommendation, pardon me. All in favor?
Yeah, well.
2, 3, 4, 5. It's carried. Thank you. I know that's a tough one. I understand that. But something that had to be done. So that is carried. Thank you. Our next department report is the 2020 reserve consolidation, and that's Tracy. That's you again.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is recommending the consolidation of a number of reserve GLs, which are outlined in Schedule B attached to your report, and also an accounting exercise to reallocate the water and wastewater receivables to the reserve GLs. By reducing the number of specific reserve GLs, we will offer ourselves more flexibility on our spending and reduce overlap of reserve purposes. The recommendation to clear the water and wastewater receivable is to balance the money that has been spent from existing reserves to cover the shortfalls from water and sewer over several years. Going forward, as our previous discussion showed, we will be running the water and sewer on a full cost recovery model, and will no longer be funding the shortages from the tax levy. Are there any questions on the report?
Questions from council? Deputy Mayor Ellison.
Thank you, Mayor Robs. Tracy, in reading the second paragraph under discussion, it says recommending we clear the 3.2 million wastewater debt. It doesn't really make any mention of water, just wastewater debt.
If you read on a little farther, water actually brought itself out of a debt last year and has a $57,000 surplus, which I'm recommending we move to the water reserve. So we'll be closing out both those receivable accounts on the books. The money in the bank will match what the GLs say, and we can start fresh. And I also attached Schedule 70 of the FIR to show you that when I submit the FIR, it looks like we're in a deficit of over $4 million, and that's because the water sewer owes us that money back. And I'm recommending that we clean this off the books while we can before legislation prevents us from letting us clear the water debt, not making it clear itself.
Okay, my question has to do with the wastewater component of it, okay?
Yep.
So the wastewater component of this debt, is that then going to come out of the general taxation? Like, even though they don't have wastewater systems?
Through your worship, it's already out of our reserves. So we've been spending money from a reserve bank account, let's say, to cover the losses from water and sewer, and then we just been recording a receivable on the books. So it's not going to affect it's not going to affect our tax rate. It's not going to, I'm not adding it to the tax levy or anything. I'm just basically balancing the books.
Okay, so my question is back again to the wastewater again. My understanding from previous discussions a number of years ago was that was primarily for the system in Elsi, Craig, and Nairn. And is that the case?
It's been sitting there for years. I'm assuming it's part of it, is part of maybe our portion that never got paid back. Because we debentured for the residents portion of the wastewater treatment plant. So we collected that money. I'm assuming this was the municipality share that's never been collected in the Elsi Craig sewer rate. And so it has never been paid back. So it's been taken from the reserves.
Right. So the general taxation has been paying for that system. So my next question is, when we do the Park Hill wastewater treatment plant, you know, the folks in Park Hill are probably going to say, hey, wait a minute, you know, we paid for Elsi Craig.
Well, I'm not saying that whole amount is Elsi Craig's debt. There's the Park Hill wastewater treat has not been paying for itself either. It's been growing every year. Park Hill residents are going to be expected to pay a portion the same as the Elsi Craig residents were. They're not going to be treated any differently. We're just trying to clean up the books so that it doesn't look like we're in a deficit of $5 million when I do the FIR. So
no, and I understand that and I support that. I just wanted clarification on the debt from the wastewater. Thank you.
Just a comment I'd make to that, following your questions, Adrian, is this is an old debt that we've asked these questions before, and we never, it wasn't really recorded what exactly it all was spent for. And so to get a further breakdown, just that it was it's this old debt that we inherited that keeps coming up. And it's,
well, you know, we just
imagine what the rates would be if we had to pay this, if the water and wastewater were paying this back. Like
exactly.
Yeah. And when I went back as far as I could, it definitely was not that big. That's where I've gotten the idea that it was basically a municipality share of paying off the Elsi Craig wastewater treatment plant, and then the wastewater deficits over the years because we weren't collecting enough to run the operations.
But that's water debt.
Both areas, not just Elsi Craig or Park Hill. So,
but that's water debt as well, isn't it? Tracy, that's water debt in there as well.
Nope, that's just wastewater. Water actually had, like I said, pulled itself.
Okay, so that was gone.
Very little, 57,000, but yeah.
Okay, Councillor McClinchy.
Just for clarification, when you were collecting for water and sewer, I understood that a lot of that all went into operating and there was no reserve built for this. Like any surplus that we got from water and sewer over the years, it went into operating and we didn't have no reserve. Is that correct? Or do I understand that right? Because we don't really have a reserve, you know, to put forward to the lagoons when we have to update them.
Right. Through you, your worship. So the wastewater and water most of the years were never running in a surplus. So there was no money going to the operations. The tax levy was helping fund the shortfall of the water and wastewater. And that's why we could never put any money to reserves. So going forward, when I do the books, there'll always be a year-end entry that just clears out water sewer to its reserve or from its reserve. It should not be affecting the tax levy at all. It should be a zero when I run a trial balance for the operations. So.
Well, when we pay our water and sewer, like that's a user fee. That's got nothing to do with the taxes.
Right.
That should have went in its own, you know, is in its own capital, right. You know, reserve. But you're saying that we didn't have enough. Like, I don't understand.
And that's from our previous discussion that this is where we've needed to raise the rates because you can see how far behind Jonathan's department is getting. So.
Yeah, we weren't paying enough to cover it. Simple as that. Yeah. Other questions from council? No other questions from this council? Okay, we have a reserve, and Jackie, once again, I'd ask you to repeat it because I'm having trouble.
Sure. So the recommendation is that the report entitled 2020 Reserve Consolidation be received, and further that the recommended reserve accounts be consolidated, and further that the balance of the outstanding wastewater deficit be annulled, with the contingency reserve and water surplus be reallocated from the receivable account to the water reserve.
Okay. We need a mover for that recommendation. Deputy Mayor Cornelison, Councillor Nickel. Any other discussion on this? All in favor? All in favor? Carried. Carried. Thank you. Our next one is COVID-19 Phase 2 funding, and that's Tracy again.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report is recommending that the municipality does not apply for the Phase 2 COVID funding. I've done a high-level Q4 estimate, and it's I'm predicting a surplus. We've had a lot of savings, operational savings in areas of hydro, education, conferences, staff reductions. And we also received that Phase 1 funding, which helped cover a lot of the interest and penalty we didn't receive. Now, my estimate did not include, we do have a $200,000 property tax write-off that's going to come off of that. And I found out today that maybe some of the arena revenue that Brandon was predicting might not come in, but all things considered, I think we're still in pretty good shape. I did sit through a webinar a couple weeks ago with the ministry, and it sounds like if you do run a surplus of any kind, you're not going to get the Phase 2 funding anyways. We're kind of in a position where we have to go to the ministry for other money. So if we're okay with not getting this, I just thought maybe we could save ourselves some paperwork and go with the Phase 1 funding and leave it at that. Are there any questions?
Questions from council? Oh, Jonathan, you're going to add to that?
I would just like to add, Tracy and I have been talking about, or through your worship, Tracy and I have been talking about this extensively in the last 2 weeks. This is not guaranteed funding in Phase 2. It's a competitive system at the back end, and it appears to be very much driven by need. Transportation was streamlined in a separate category. So single-tier municipalities that have transportation systems seem to be getting a large injection in this. Because of the position and the savings that we've been able to incur this year because of the pandemic, we honestly believe that we're not going to be able to get to that. And the time commitment for staff to put in an effort on an if and a but with the question mark at the back end, we feel like our time would be much more appropriate and allocated going after Infrastructure Ontario, grants through different green streams, those things coming up.
Okay. Questions on this, anyone? Tracy?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to add that the reason this is coming forward is because if council does wish me to apply for the Phase 2 funding, I have to have council resolution by October 30th. And I also have to submit the application by October 30th. So there's a bit of a timeline for this application as well.
Okay, so questions from council? If not, we have the recommendation in front of us. And once again, Jackie, I'll ask you to.
That's the staff report entitled COVID Phase 2 Operational Relief Funding be received, and that council approve the staff recommendation that we do not apply for Phase 2 operational funding relief.
Okay, do we have a mover for that? Councillor Moyer, Councillor McClinchy. Discussion? All in favor? Yes, carried. Thank you. Our next one is, hey, it's an easier one. Review municipal drain tender opening and Brown Rose Drain, and that is the drainage superintendent.
Your worship, members of council, what you have in front of you is the review of the municipal drain tender for the Brown Rose Drain. The recommendation is that council receive this report and direct staff to award the construction of the Brown Rose Drain tender to Robinson Farm Drainage Limited in the amount of 60,222. If there's any questions, I'll answer them. If not, you have a recommendation in front of you.
Any questions? No questions? A mover on that? Councillor Keogh, Councillor Hemming? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Our next one is, open air burn bylaw, and that's Fire Chief Greg Van Hoovel.
Your worship, members of council, you have in front of you a report recommending that you receive the open air bylaw and that you approve it, the accompanying bylaw. Just as a little bit of background, our current open air bylaw was passed back in 2004, and it established that residents wishing to have an open burn required permission to burn, and they were demonstrating the conditions under which the burn would be conducted. Council has recommended or requested from staff that a review be undertaken. We've done that. We've clarified some definitions and enumerated some penalties if offenses take place. And finally, we have about 150 to 200 burn permits issued every year. Do you have any questions?
Questions? No questions from council? Oh, Councillor Moyer?
Hey, Greg. Just a one, and I did review this with you before, and I apologize, I should have caught it. The size of a fire that for agricultural, on an agricultural property that you do not need a permit for?
I believe it's 1 meter.
1 meter? Okay. And that is listed in here someplace, is there?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
All right. Okay. All right. Deputy Mayor Cornelison.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Greg, in terms of the fines that you're recommending, are they going to be consistent with what was there prior? Like, we're not going to go to like $450 a truck or something, are we?
So the fines are, the recommendation was that we institute some fines, which I don't anticipate are going to be levied very often at all. It's more if we have a case of recidivism, somebody who is obstinate and they will not stop burning, flouting whatever the condition of the bylaw is. I don't anticipate that they're there, but they could be used in addition to the fee for service that's already established through a separate bylaw. Okay,
because my concern is that I know that in previous years when we had this issue come up, that someone came to us, I think they had like a $3,800 fine for a fire without a permit, which I thought was a little excessive, but I don't see that here in your fee schedule, so I just wanted to have clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know how there would have been a fine because we had no fee or no fines in the existing bylaw. There's just the fees for the trucks responding.
That's what I mean. The fee for the truck. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. Okay.
I think that was changed as well too, wasn't it?
Was.
Adrian, I believe there was some large fines at one point and we changed it.
Yes, we did.
I think there was some large fines listed for a while. And
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions for the fire chief? No other questions for the fire chief? He has a recommendation. Councillor Moyer, Councillor Hemming, is that your hand up? Sorry, it froze up. Yep. All right. Seconded by Councillor Hemming. All in favor? In favor? Carried. Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Our next one is the update to the electronic building permit application process. And Jonathan, I believe that's you.
Through your worship, members of council, the recommendation before you that council approve the attached contract amendment whereby extending the municipal's free trial period with Evolta cloud permit until March 30th, 2021, and that staff be directed to evaluate and report back to council prior to the conclusion of the extended 6-month trial or no obligation trial with Evolta to evaluate the future contract and its undertaking. A little background on this, the tool that was leveraged for us to use when we went to contracted service for the building department through Middlesex Center, Evolta, we entered into an agreement with the free trial period of 6 months. Shannon Black, our new CBO, and myself aren't too thrilled about the customer service that we've been getting. So we've been pushing back to them. So in response to that, they have extended the trial period, have told us that they will be fixing the glitches that we have issues with. And furthermore, in the contract negotiation of that extension, they have offered a buy-in function with the other 3 municipalities being part of the joint building service, that if all 3 of us sign on, that they would reduce our rates. Funny enough, when we first approached them about that, they weren't entertaining that at all. So part and parcel of just negotiating a contract, they're coming back to us with some timbits, but through the period of this negotiation, we have exhausted a 45-day period to waive our contract, or not waive our contract negotiations, but waive the exit of our contract. So I very much would appreciate that we can extend our trial period so that we can evaluate appropriately. If it came down to push and shove about that, I think we'd be able to win that. In good faith, we notified them that we weren't happy with their service and we'd be able to exit out. But I think we should give them another try to see if they can improve their service. On a side note, more municipalities in Southwestern Ontario are joining this service. We are an outlier right now, not being part of the service. Are there any questions?
Just to comment to that as well, Jonathan, we're not going to eliminate paper applications.
Under the Ontario Building Code, we cannot. We have reverted back to solely paper-based right now. But again, on a note, we do have a builder in Westwood Estates who's accustomed to this tool, who's asked to use this tool. It's still available for us, but we're managing it on the back end of it as a request base. But right now, we're all back to paper.
All right, thank you. Other questions from council? No other questions? Councillor Keogh.
Yeah, thank you. Jonathan, are any of the other abutting municipalities that have this system, are they not having any issues?
Through your worship, there's a couple bottlenecks in this. There's duplication for fees, and there's duplications to reporting to MPAC and Statistics Canada. And that the seamless tool that they promised us is not quite seamless. To answer your question in terms of the difficulties that Middlesex Center may have, they have a department for the building, in their building department, that manages a lot of hand-holding, where again, they were expressed to us that this would be a seamless tool, and we're having to find ourselves that we have to manage applications on a regular basis to have it go through. We don't have the time commitment or the resources that Middlesex Center has to be able to do that, or Lucan-Medolph. Strathroy, it's similarly, but that's something that we need to discover as we go through the exploration of the joint service building, the service that we put in place, and to make sure that we're properly staffed, or if they're properly staffed. So this is just giving us a little bit more time to evaluate.
So just in clarification, there's a 6-month extension on this at no charge.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
There we go. So my internet has become a little unstable here, so I'm not quite getting through on it.
Just to clarify, so is mine, so it must be an Elsi Craig thing.
Okay, so are others hearing me?
Yeah.
We're hearing you, Brian.
Okay, all right, so is there any other questions on this? Speak up, because I don't think, I think some of these are still froze up on our internet. No other questions?
No.
If not, we have, Deputy Mayor, do you have a question?
No, I do not.
Okay, we have a recommendation in front of us. Okay, thank you. We have a recommendation in front of us. We need a mover. Sorry, somebody's got to speak up.
Yeah. Andy?
Keo.
Moved by Councillor Keogh.
Hemming.
Seconded by Councillor Hemming. Is that right?
It's the reverse, but it's okay.
Close enough.
Okay, all right, thank you. Sorry, I'm, like I said, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Somebody else, Jackie?
Aye.
Yeah, so we,
Can you
yeah,
see the
please,
vote, Jackie?
yeah, please show your hands and yes, that's all in favor. Yep. That's good.
Okay,
It's
thank you.
carried.
All right. That's looked after. Our next one is payment of accounts, passing of accounts.
Thank you, Your Worship. We were recommending the bills and accounts amounting to $513,192.75 be approved for payment. Are there any questions on the AP?
Question? No questions?
No questions, Your Worship.
No.
Okay. Need a mover? Pay our bills?
Joan,
Councillor Nickel, seconded by
McClincy.
Keo.
Councillor McClinchy. All in favor?
Yeah.
All in favor, Jackie, can you see
Yeah, it's
that?
carried. Yep, it's carried.
Okay, thank you. It's carried. Committee reports. Just going, I'll go down, Lake Huron Supply, anything?
Yeah.
Okay.
We did have a meeting, and just for your info, the rates will be going up, the municipal rates, by 50 cents and 50 point some cents per cubic meter. Okay, so that's coming down the pipe.
Literally.
Eating into our budget already.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
Nope, it's good.
ABCA, anything, Adrian?
Yes, Mayor Rob, absolutely.
Okay.
I don't know, members of council have not an opportunity to read the messages or the communication or the minutes of the Sawmill Bayfield meeting, but attached to that is the proposed budget, 2021 budget. And one of the questions I had, which has been an ongoing issue for North Middlesex, is the apportionment and how that's determined. So that is included in that report. I'd certainly encourage everyone to read it to gain a better understanding of how our levy is determined. This year, our increase will be 0.84%, I believe, because of reduction in project levies and the general levy as well. Finally, the last thing I asked was what time constraint is there to a permit approval? And they told me that they're getting back to 2 to 3 week time frame. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anything for Adrian? Councillor Moyer, did you have something for him? No?
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Adrian.
all right, go ahead.
Had some people on the weekend there in the through the conservation areas, and they were saying what poor shape the trails were in. And is that something that the Sawmill used to maintain the trails, or was that like an Optimist or Lions that would do that?
Which area are you talking about, Councillor Moyer?
The Park Hill Conservation Area.
Yeah, I brought that up before. I don't think they're maintaining them at all, actually, at this time.
Right now they're not. He said they're in terrible shape.
Yes, they are. I know that I brought that up previously, and they said they'd look into it, but clearly they have not done so. I will certainly bring it up at our next meeting.
Okay. There's a lot of four-wheelers in there.
Yes, there is.
Yeah. Blue Water Recycling, anything, Councillor McClinchy?
No.
Okay. EDAC, anything there?
No.
LSAC, the local school advisory.
We did have a meeting. We had a meeting last week that I could not attend. So I would have asked Deputy Mayor Cornelison and or Councillor McClinchy if perhaps they could speak on that meeting. It sounds like it was a pretty interesting meeting.
Mayor Rob, I'll defer to the acting chair. Councillor McClinchy was acting chair. I'll defer to her.
Okay,
thank you.
Arlene and Sean both were there, which was good, and we had a parent represent, a couple parent, no, one parent representative, her daughter, and Jackie had some promotional items that that we had reviewed. Jackie, can you got something there? Can you show us what we present to them, or do you have some?
It was a bag in that there's some promotional items in it as well.
Yeah, there was a pen, and I'm not sure what else, something for your phone,
Yeah.
sort of thing. It was a very interesting meeting. I did briefly look over the minutes today, but I really didn't observe a lot of stuff that I wanted to bring up, sort of thing. So, Adrian, well, Sean and Arlene kept us up to date on what's happening. Adrian, can you kind of elaborate on what we were talking about? I lost my.
Certainly I can, Councillor McClinchy, absolutely. Through the rural task force that I sit on, I think I mentioned to you at our last council meeting that there was a recommendation to the school board to implement a number of recommendations, and the board did in fact endorse them. I thought I sent them onward, but perhaps I haven't. I can certainly do that, or I can read them now if you wish. Arlene is asking that these will go to the county level, so they will be, when she has that prepared, we'll be taking it to county as well. Would you like to hear what the motions are?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Adrian.
Okay, so here they are, that the Board of Trustees advocate for the following and invite the Rural Education Task Force municipal members to advocate similarly, maintaining and enhancing the Rural and Northern Education Fund funding model for rural and northern schools. Number 2, maintain the moratorium on school consolidations and closures for the schools that qualify identified for the Rural and Northern Education Fund in accordance with the Ministry of Education draft public accommodation guidelines. Number 3, strengthening of integrated local planning at the community level and to promote local planning conversations among school boards, municipalities, and other relevant local partners to ensure ongoing school consolidations, closures, additions, or new builds. Number 4, provincial policies for capacity planning and pupil accommodation reviews that formally recognize the importance and value to the community of rural and single school community schools. Those are the 4 recommendations, and Ms. Morel stressed the importance of these motions be supported for North Middlesex, as all our schools qualify for the Northern Education Fund.
Adrian, was that for the county? Those motions that came from the county?
No. The county established, or the school board established, a Rural Education Task Force.
Oh, right, that you're on.
I
right?
represent the county on that task force.
Yes.
And so this will be coming to the county as well, and I think to each municipality as well.
Okay, yeah.
Are you making a motion to support those recommendations?
Not at this time, Mayor Rob. I'm waiting for some correspondence from Chair Morel.
Yeah.
That'll clearly define, to be more explicit and define clearly what's needed.
Okay, so we'll leave it until we hear more from that?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions for that committee? Hearing none, we'll move on. Recreation Committee, anything?
No.
Water, wastewater?
No.
I think we've dealt with that enough tonight.
You got that right.
Policy Review Committee?
No.
Fire Committee?
No, nothing yet.
Okay. Budget Committee, nothing yet. We don't have a date set for the Budget Committee yet. The Aqua Client Advisory Board, is that still going, Jonathan?
It's very limited. They reduced their meeting circulation.
Okay.
But they only meet quarterly, so there'll be one probably by the year's end.
Okay. Community Development Fund Committee?
No.
That, do we have applications? They should be coming in not till November, I guess, is it?
Yeah, so
Okay.
through your worship, it closes on November 30th.
Okay. Joint Building Committee, I don't think, Jonathan, is there anything you want to bring forward on that?
Just the recommendation that we would consider the Volta extension, which we already have.
Okay, which we've already looked after. Huron Shores Transit Committee, my name's on that, but Mike Bernier will be our rep on that going forward. Looking at the terms of reference, it did not say in the terms of reference that it had to be an elected official. And so Mike is going to be our rep on that. The one point I will make right now, for it to really work for North Middlesex, right now the bus only goes from Elsi Craig to Park Hill to Grand Bend and then back. Like that's the limit to the access for North Middlesex right now. So if there's nothing else on committees, we'll move on to correspondence. First one is Board of Health monthly update, September 2020. Receive and file. Township of Loyalist, motion support for government funding for community groups and service clubs affected by the pandemic. Nothing. Wellington County, motion support regarding revised criteria for assessment of aggregate resource properties. Receive and file. Norfolk County Police Services Board, concerns regarding cannabis production facilities. Solicitor General, updates on various government initiatives. Lake of Bays reform to municipal insurance policy. Nothing on that. Other and urgent business. Other business. So I guess I'll start with one. I think everybody's aware that the mobile the mobile test for COVID-19, that bus is coming to Elsi Craig tomorrow morning, and it's coming to Park Hill next Thursday morning. Correct, Jonathan? It's the 29th.
That's correct. The 29th, 22nd being tomorrow in Elsi Craig, and the 29th in Park Hill.
Yeah. And so we're telling people if they show symptoms to come and line up, and they're getting their system down much better, and they're doing pre-assessment on it, so people aren't waiting there all day for nothing. So, but that is starting tomorrow morning. And Jonathan is, and in the recreation, pardon me, Mike and Brandon have been working on that mostly, as well as the works to help with barriers and stuff. But they're going to be assisting with that tomorrow. Anything you want to add to that, Jonathan?
Nope.
No. Any other business? No other business? Okay. Referred items you have in front of you. Communications from the county. Adrian, do you want to start?
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor Rob. The county, at our last county meeting, we had a robust discussion on housing, social housing in the county and in the city, and there are a number of questions asked. At this time, there is no plans or intent to acquire or build additional housing in the county. The city did receive some funding from the provincial and federal governments, which they will be investing in the city. We had a meeting on housing the following day, which was a little bit more conciliatory, if you will, and that we were able to identify that the housing crisis is not a county issue, it's not a city issue, it's a London and Middlesex issue. And so we're hoping that to try and to separate Middlesex from London somewhat, while London would still administer and be the major shareholder and be the funding body, but to separate the need from the county from the city. And so that's something that will be worked on going forward. SCORE did come back to the county as well, and I think there's going to be support for them since they've got did some good work for parts of the county. And then the planning department came forward and discussed their planning strategies and the challenges that they're having with the COVID and staff retention. Apparently, I think if I recall, Mr. Rob or Brian Rob or Mayor Rob, sorry, that they're having some challenges retaining planners. And I know that the Thames Valley School Board has actually acquired 2 of the experienced planners from the county. Other than that, I don't think there was anything, Mayor Rob. I don't know if you have anything you wish to add.
I just add to the social housing that when they showed the number of units that are in the county, they said for social housing, there was 130 units in Elsi Craig, like spaces, and 119 in Park Hill. And the deputy mayor will agree that we both asked them to ensure that they were going to come back and justify those numbers, because I only know of 8 in Elsi Craig. So I don't, you know, so they're supposed to justify those numbers to us. Is there any questions about the county, about what's going on? Nothing? Okay, no closed meeting. Reading of the bylaws.
Bylaw 62 is the Campbell drain, and it will be for third and final reading. Bylaw 63 is the Watson drain, which will be seeking third and final reading. Bylaw 76 is to amend the assessment schedule for the Burley drain. Bylaw 77 is a levying bylaw for the Morrissey, Fleming Morrissey, and Regan drains 2018. Bylaw 78 is for the open air burn bylaw. Bylaw 79 is updating the fire committee in terms of reference to include an additional council appointment. Bylaw 80 is setting the water, wastewater, and stormwater rates. And I do want to clarify, there was 2 options, but only the option 2 bylaw will be considered by council based on the report earlier this evening. Bylaw 81 is to authorize and exercise the renewal option agreement with municipal enforcement unit. So that was direction given to staff at the last meeting. The term will be for a 3-year term, and it's a 2% increase in fees, and there'll be no other changes to the service. And bylaw 82 is the confirming bylaw. So we're looking for first and second reading for bylaws 76 to 82, unless there's any questions.
You'll have to speak up. I can't see hands coming up.
So Doreen,
Councillor Moyer.
McClinchy. Okay.
Okay, you got it. You got him.
I
All in
had
favor?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that carried.
Okay.
And now we're looking for third and final reading for bylaw 62, 63, and 76 to 82. So
You have to get them.
yeah, okay, so I've got Councillor Hemming and Councillor Nickel. And we're
Okay, all in
looking for
favor?
all in favor. And that's carried.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Only one thing left to do. One thing I'll say that in Elsi Craig, we got a notice to upgrade our internet, thank goodness. And so it's supposed to be a lot better. We'll see what happens, hopefully by the next meeting. So I just need a motion to adjourn.
Councillor McClinchy and Councillor Keogh.
Okay, all in favor?
Okay.
Carrie. Carrie, thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Okay.
Right.